panelists will focus on the criminal, legal, and law enforcement responses. I'm going to discuss how we help as a direct service agency, as these go hand in hand, and we can always respond more effectively when we work together. I will also talk about domestic violence in general and then touch on what we are seeing that is different in this time of COVID. In the Chicago area, thankfully, there are many direct service agencies. Many focus on specific geographic locations, and others, like SHALVA, focus on a specific culture. At SHALVA, we support Jewish women experiencing healing from domestic abuse through counseling, supportive services, and community education. Our clients come from all over Chicago, the Chicago area, and many are from the 14th District, most notably from Northbrook and Arlington Heights. There's a slide at the end of the program which will list all the other culturally sensitive agencies. And I think it's just really important sometimes that survivors, they need that. They need to go to an agency that really understands the nuances of the culture that they are living in. Our office is in a confidential location, and of course, all client information is confidential. Our clinical program offers a 24/7 help crisis line, and while we provide crisis counseling, survivors need so much more to be safe and heal. We offer trauma-informed counseling sessions for as long as needed and tailored to each person's unique circumstances. This often includes creating a safety plan, learning about domestic violence and its impact on the survivor and the children, decreasing isolation, developing coping skills, strengthening parenting skills, and increasing the awareness of the intergenerational cycle of domestic violence. If they stay with us long enough, we help guide them as they progress through their healing journey, moving from crisis and feeling vulnerable to surviving, and for some, even thriving. The ultimate goal is for them to be safe, regain their sense of self, and not blame themselves for getting into and staying in an abusive relationship. There is never a charge for services, and all our therapists have master's degrees specifically certified for domestic violence counseling and are certified trained trauma professionals. I know in this audience there's various levels of knowledge about domestic violence out there, so I just want to make sure everyone has a working understanding of the definition of abuse and has some sense of the warning signs other than unexplained bruises, broken bones, and calls to the police. Because if there's earlier intervention and earlier support for victims, there is a higher likelihood of a better outcome. So just a few stats and qualifiers. While domestic violence is underreported, the most common stat is that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. It happens across all demographics: age, economic status, race, sexual orientation, religion, and educational level. I have a board member who likes to say it's an equal opportunity destroyer. We use the terms domestic violence, domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, IPV interchangeably. It's all the same thing. So domestic violence is defined as a systematic pattern of power and control for the sole purpose of manipulating a partner in an intimate relationship. The key words are pattern, power, and control. There can be unhealthy relationships that are not abusive. Everyone occasionally loses their temper, says unkind things, or loses control. But this is not about lack of control. It is the opposite. It is deliberate and all about controlling another person. The abuser knows exactly what they are doing, and it is never the survivor or victim's fault. Abuse is not 24/7, there's a cycle to it. Tensions build, there'll be an incident or a crisis, then a reconciliation, calm, often called the honeymoon period. And then it will start all over again, sometimes a few days later, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and we've even seen in our clients sometimes years. There are different types of abuse. The public is most familiar with physical abuse, but emotional, psychological, financial, sexual abuse can be just as devastating and often harder to understand. We say at SHALVA that the bruises on the inside are often harder to heal than the ones you can see. At our luncheon this past June, we had a speaker who was a survivor of technology abuse, which is kind of a new thing, and we're starting to see it in our office. Her story could have been the story of many of a SHALVA client. She experienced so many things our clients go through and so many of the types of abuse I mentioned. I would like to share her remarks because it really demonstrates what this looks like. Her partner was wealthy. They owned several beautiful homes that were equipped with the latest technology. And I just want to say, not all SHALVA clients are wealthy by any means. Security cameras were everywhere. Automated lighting built into audio systems. Everything can be controlled using a smart device. At first, she enjoyed the convenience until it became a tool to be used to harass and psychologically torture her in her own home. Her partner traveled a lot, and he controlled her from thousands of miles away. He listened in and watched her every move. He deprived her of sleep, blaring music and flashing lights on and off all night long. She could not just turn the system off, as she would be completely in the dark without heat or hot water. She was completely isolated from friends and family and others. Their house was remote and totally dependent on him financially. She had previously had a successful career, but he told her she did not need to work. He had plenty of money and he would take care of her. It got so bad, she decided she had to go to the police and ask for help. She went to the grocery store, left her cell phone in the car so she could not track her, and walked into the nearby police station. The officers asked her if he ever hit her. She said no. Asked her if he ever threatened her with a deadly weapon. She said no. She tried to explain that she was being terrorized. She was told it was his home, he could use the system however he wanted, and there was no crime being committed. It took her months to gain the courage to go back to the police, but months later, she found the courage to do so. She did it 2 more times, always getting a similar response. On the 4th time, an officer she had not seen before handed her a slip of paper with the name and number of a local domestic violence agency. That saved her life. It took time, but she received the help she needed and is now safe. The PTSD that comes along with abuse is largely under control, but she can still be triggered. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to ask for help, and it's devastating if someone reaches out and are met with blame, disbelief, minimizing, or why don't you just leave? And so that's why it's so important that community members, officials, law enforcement, and clergy recognize the signs and learn what to say. In fact, she had gone to a rabbi as well. She was Jewish, and that he was dismissive as well. So we have a new program on our website I just want to tell you about. It's a series of videos to guide you through what to say to somebody if you suspect there may be abuse. I recommend you try it out if you're concerned about someone. So if you are concerned, what do you look for? There are warning signs or red flags that a friend or family member might be demonstrating. Are they hanging up the phone the minute their partner comes to the house and interrupt a conversation? When we could have plans out, were they canceling at the last minute or making if they did go out with you, were they constantly being checked on their cell phone with the partner sending texts or calls, how's it going, where you're doing, FaceTime with you? And sometimes there's a change in personality from being an outgoing individual to becoming withdrawn. If someone confides in you or you suspect, listen, believe the survivor, maintain confidentiality, do not judge, and do not tell the survivor what to do.
Hi, how are you?
They need to be in control, and they know what is right for them. So what is different during COVID, and what have we seen? Our appointments are over the phone, and we're soon to do virtual appointments. Sometimes it's hard for our clients to get away if the kids are home, and now there's virtual learning. The abuser could be around more, but they're resilient in finding creative ways. Leaving is always hard, but COVID has created additional barriers. If someone is considering going into a shelter, even if open and precautions are being taken, it doesn't feel safe due to COVID. As part of safety planning, we often identify a friend or family member that they can go to, but now that's not only safe. They can't just go to the next door neighbor and knock on the door and say, I'm here, even if it had been planned. Many go to their parents, but now they're concerned for their parents' health and safety due to COVID. There's a lot of increased stress and anxiety in the world and in the home, and it's a feeling of lost control. We're all feeling it. As I mentioned earlier, the root cause of abuse is a need for power and control. So this environment can lead to an escalation in both the likelihood, frequency, and severity of the abuse. We know that alcohol does not cause abuse, but heavy drinking, which often happens when someone is stressed, can make it worse and more dangerous. And we're seeing an increase in that as well. Many of our clients have lost their jobs or their partner has lost their jobs, adding another layer of stress and financial need. It also is increasing the abuse. Isolation is almost always a factor in abuse, and COVID has increased that as well. I think we're all feeling a little isolated. We work with our clients so they can have a little piece of their life, carve out a little bit of time for themselves, and we encourage them to talk to friends or go take a yoga class or do something that will help them be less isolated. And during COVID, that's just more difficult. Now with the weather still nice, they can go for walks in the park, but we're concerned when it gets cold. It makes them feel more trapped and harder to get away. Finally, COVID is being used to further the abuse. If parents are not on the same page, it is being used to alienate the kids. If the survivor is very careful, the abuser may take the kids out without masks, go to get-togethers, eat in restaurants, tell the kids it's conspiracy theory. Or it can be the flip. The abuser will tell the kids the other parent is not being safe and you will get sick from them. You need to stay away. So I just want to end by stressing the importance of community education and programs like this and the community coming together to make a difference. It takes all of us sitting around this virtual table, both the panelists and those of you listening in. I barely scratched the surface here, but please participate. There's so many Domestic Violence Awareness Month programs going around, and continue to educate yourself. Please reach out to us or another DV agency if you or someone you know needs help. Working together as a community like this can help survivors get the help and resources they need. I look forward to hearing the other presenters, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. And I believe that President Preckwinkle is on the phone. Are you there, Madam President?
Okay. Hi, this is Tony Preckwinkle. I just want to apologize for the technical difficulties that I encountered tonight, and I want to thank Commissioner Britton for this event as part of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm grateful to our panelists for their participation as well. And given the difficulties that I had, I think we'll leave it at that. And with my thanks to the Commissioner, as I said, for sharing this great information with all the participants.
Thank you, Madam President. I do appreciate you being able to be here. Your leadership has been essential and continues that way as we go forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just as I'll add to some of the things that Carol said, one thing I learned in my training through the Archdiocese was that, you know, you do not have to stay with an abuser even in a religious context. You know, I think a lot of people, including me, thought, you know, you can't leave a person who's abusing you. You have to just suck it up and stay with an abuser. That is not the case, certainly in the Catholic religion, or I think in any religion in our county. So please do not believe that you have to stay because God wants you to. God wants you to take care of yourself. So, and again, thank you so much, Carol. Our next speaker is going to be Tene McCoy Cummings. She is a assistant state's attorney and has a supervisory role in the Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Department of the Cook County State's Attorney. Tene, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hello, everyone. I am from the State's Attorney's Office, and I am the supervisor of the Sexual Assault Domestic Violence Unit. I'd just like to take an opportunity to explain what our unit is. Sexual Assault Domestic Violence Unit consists of assistant state's attorneys and supervisors. We handle sexual assault cases on the felony level. We handle domestic cases in the Domestic Violence Unit, both misdemeanors and felonies. And we also have crimes against children and internet crimes against children. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office, we're committed to addressing domestic violence in a fair and in a complete trauma-informed and victim-centered way. So what does that mean? So when we talk about domestic violence, Carol and the Commissioner both talked about power and control, and we see that in the legal field each and every day. And so when we talk about complete and fair, that is when the survivor is ready to proceed, we we are ready. And that means that we assess each case based upon the facts that they are at that time. Statistically, it may take a few times for a survivor to come forward and want to proceed in prosecution. And therefore, when the survivor is ready and we have the facts to prove that case, we take that case independently. So it doesn't matter what has happened before. We look at the case and your empowerment in going forward at that moment. And so when we say trauma-informed, that means building the trustworthiness, the transparency, giving you the support that you need through the legal process and the communication. And then when we say in a victim-centered way, that is respecting your desires and your wishes, but also balancing the safety. So what happens? What happens now in Cook County if you have a case? Some of the most common cases are domestic batteries, we have assaults, and we have criminal damage to property. And we also have violation of orders of protection. But what we see most often is an escalation. And so we see oftentimes that crimes may start as an assault, and then they begin to escalate to physical violence, or they may be able to escalate to violence of property or to even pets. Those are the times that we are the most concerned, and we want to make sure that survivors have the tool necessary to leave. I think Commissioner Britton and both Carol talked about leaving. And we understand that statistically, leaving can be the most dangerous time for a survivor. And that is because you're taking back the power and control. But you're not alone. And I think panels like this, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, that's one thing that we're trying to highlight, the resources and the support that is available. So when you are ready, we're ready. And so what does that mean? There are domestic violence advocacy groups, as Carol talked about. There are resources available through the hotline. There are victim witness specialists that are in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that are there to provide you resources. And so on a legal front, what options are available? And I just want to mention a few today during this panel. We have what is called a protective order, also called an order of protection. That is available at each and every courthouse in the suburbs and also available at 555 West Harrison. So how do you obtain a protective order during COVID? You can come to the courthouse in the suburbs and you can obtain a civil protective order. And what does that mean? That means individuals that are household members, family members, they share an intimate partner relationship, dating relationship, or they have kids in common. They are eligible if they are in fear of their safety, if there's been any type of domestic abuse or some type of escalation. It is there to make you safe. And so you can come to the courthouse and you can petition in order to get that order of protection. At 555 West Harrison, you can also come in, if you call the DB hotline, there are also remote ways that you are able to get protective orders. So that's one, that's an order of protection. But there are also other remedies that are available. There is a stalking no contact order. And that is when you don't have those type of relationships like a family relationship. We see stalking no contact orders in different situations where there's an escalation of stalking. It could be someone that you never knew that they begin to follow you, or maybe you went out on a date one time and an individual begins to follow you and there's escalating behavior and what we call a course of conduct that no longer makes you feel safe. Then you could be eligible for a stalking no contact order. And lastly, there is a civil no contact order. And that is a protective order that's used in most cases when there is non-consensual sexual conduct or there is a sexual penetration. And most of the time we see that when there are rape situations. And individuals can get a civil no contact order to protect them from this particular abuser. What we have found, and we know the numbers, statistically, 24, every minute, approximately 24 people may be victims of rape or physical violence or some type of stalking. We want you to know that we are here to give you the resources in order to do whatever it is that you decide to do within the legal system. So I want to tell you a little bit about our unit. When I talked about state's attorneys, assistant state's attorneys, in the domestic violence unit and the sexual assault, these are trained attorneys for just these subject matters. And so that means that we are there to listen, that we understand the complexities of the domestic violence case. We understand the power and control, and we understand the other things that might come into play, such as finances or kids or other protections that you need when you are dealing with a domestic violence case. So our assistant state's attorneys are trained. And so in each and every courthouse in the suburbs, and also at 555 West Harrison, we have assistant state's attorneys that are trained in domestic violence. And they are there to assist you. They are there to help you through the process. Another thing that I want to mention is that we have a victim witness specialist unit, and they are our liaison. So if you, for whatever reason, cannot get in contact with your assistant state's attorney that's handling your case, it is a victim witness specialist that can be the liaison to help you and guide you through that process. We know that being a survivor of domestic abuse can be difficult, and we are there to give you the resources. This is not something that you have to do alone. And as a legal professional, we are here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Tene. It gives me hope when we have people like Tene who are handling these matters, who both feel and then can actually do things to help mostly women, but also men who are the victims of domestic abuse. I also believe that State's Attorney Kim Foxx has put this as a priority in her office. I've seen that myself in my last 2 years as a Cook County Commissioner. It is essential that we have these resources, and it has been, I think, a testament to her and to you, Tene, that this has been such a successful program and continues to be. So there's help out there, and we can definitely get you the assistance you need, and you're not alone in dealing with these problems. So thank you. Also, I forgot to mention, if anyone has a question, you can put it in the chat function, and we'll try to have a little bit of question and answer at the end with our distinguished panelists. So our next speaker is going to be Tisa Morris, who is a director of the Cook County Sheriff's Office, and she's also going to speak about how the sheriff can be a part of this solution to the domestic violence problem. Director Morris?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the members of the panel and thank everyone on behalf of Sheriff Dart for including us in this very important discussion. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my role in the office and the things that Sheriff Dart is doing to support both our communities and the survivors of domestic violence. And then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about the programs that Sheriff Dart has instituted. I am privileged to be the Director of Community Engagement for Sheriff Dart. I was previously an Assistant State's Attorney with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. While with the State's Attorney's Office, I had several supervisory roles. Most recently, the Chief of the Juvenile Bureau. I worked with domestic violence advocates to develop a program to train state's attorneys and the judges assigned there at the time on the topic of intimate partner violence, and how it affects juveniles and their families. I also led a training on how orders of protection could be entered in the juvenile court to protect those who had suffered domestic abuse. While there, I taught portions of the domestic violence 40-hour training program, and I myself am 40 hours trained. I'm honored to in the role of the Director of Community Engagement for the Cook County Sheriff's Office. I work with my colleagues in the office to connect with the diverse communities that we serve. Most recently, Sheriff Dart hosted a series of wellness fairs in Austin, Fort Heights, and Chatham areas. He hosted a resource fair in the south suburbs and partnered with agencies in the Austin community to host a pop-up resource fair. I'm sorry, my dog seems to be a little bit upset that I'm not giving her attention. I apologize. Additionally, this summer, Sheriff Dart hosted a peace circle on the west side of Chicago. The Cook County Sheriff's Office partnered with the Chicago Police Department to collect unwanted electronics and drugs. Further, to help the community, through the Sheriff's Rebuild Program, we help businesses in various parts of Cook County that had been damaged and looted. As the other speakers had mentioned, the COVID pandemic has forever changed the way we live, and the Sheriff's Office was also greatly impacted. But because of the planning and action taken by our staff of professionals, we were able to create protocols to protect the staff and detainees. We constantly test. There is a mobile site on the South Campus that provides testing. We maintain transparency regarding test results of detainees and staff. The results are posted on the sheriff's website every day. As of September 30th, 523 Cook County Sheriff's staff that had tested positive have thankfully returned to work. 515 detainees who had tested positive have recovered. To protect staff and detainees, Sheriff Dart created a 500-bed quarantine and care facility off-site at what was formerly known as the boot camp. There are temperature checks of those entering and leaving the facility, and there is mass availability of hand sanitizers. Detainees were moved to a single cell starting in March, and that was completed in April. And now about the DV programs that we offer throughout the office. There is a DV component in our substance abuse and mental health programs. We follow a harm reduction model, which develops protective factors and resources for those encountering domestic violence. Within the jail, domestic violence groups are facilitated. The Salvation Army and Fatherhood in Action program includes sessions on handling conflict, stress and calming, and community safety. Additionally, this past year, Sheriff Dart hired 2 domestic violence advocates who provide referrals and support to survivors who have called the sheriff's police because of domestic violence. The courage that it takes to finally reach out to seek help, as our speakers have already said, we want to support them when they do. These advocates supplement the police training curriculum and additionally provide our officers with a system of supportive resources and information. In the months that we have been involved in this program, the domestic violence advocates hired by Sheriff Dart have reached out to over 800 people that have been impacted and survived domestic violence. As we look forward toward the future, it is our intent to open a temporary pet shelter for victims who are fleeing domestic violence. Currently in the Cook County area, that is a resource that is in very short supply. So we are currently looking for ways to support and develop that so that those that are fleeing domestic violence do not have to worry about their pets and they can concentrate on the safety of themselves and their loved ones. We hope to expand and strengthen our current programs and develop new programs relevant to the needs of the diverse communities that we serve and continue to deepen our partnerships with our communities. I thank you for this time and I appreciate again the invitation to be here.
Thank you, Director Morris. Please also extend my thanks to Sheriff Dart. We try to work
thank you.
very closely with him as well as with State's Attorney Kim Fox on these issues, and I know he's been committed as well to providing as many resources as possible. Again, I don't know how much time we'll have for questions. Any questions that are included in the chat or emailed to any of us, we will respond to them after the conclusion of this event. I also just want to say very briefly, the resources that are available in Cook County are myriad, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that they can reach out to a number of different resources, whether they be private groups like SHALVA or through the State's Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Office. You can also call my office number, which is 312-603-4932, and my office will be happy to help and direct you toward whatever resource we can give for your help. So I do have a couple questions that I got, and the first one is with Carol. If you're there and can unmute, I can ask you a quick question. There you are. So have calls to SHALVA's helpline changed in their nature over the course of this pandemic?
So yes and no. It's still the same. I think for us, because we get calls for non-physical abuse and then physical, we have seen an uptick in the physical abuse. I was just looking over, the intakes and that what that is, and then getting to us can be more difficult, even though we're not in a location. And I think we have long-term relationships with our clients, and we of course do trauma-informed therapy. I was listening to everyone, I didn't use that word. But I think it's difficult not being able to actually meet in person with clients right now. And so that's changed a little bit too. So as somebody comes to us for the first time and never, it's hard for our therapists usually develop relationships with the clients. So that's a little more difficult during this time.
I think everything that we do seems more difficult.
Right.
We've done a lot of telehealth through the Cook County Health System, and I'm hoping we can do as much as we can remotely with domestic violence as well. So Assistant State's Attorney Cummings, I have a note here that's actually one thing that I was kind of wondering about as an attorney myself. Has the State's Attorney's Office prosecuted cases where the victim is subject exclusively to technology abuse?
Yes, so for us, that is called electronic harassment by electronic means. And we can see that in a couple of different ways. We can see that based upon telephone harassment. We can see that based upon harassment by email, by text, by social media. And so one of the most important things that I do want to say when we are prosecuting those type of crimes, it is important for the evidence keeping. And so that means if you receive a lot of text messages that are unwanted, that might have threats or they're harassing in nature, keep all of that evidence. And so that is something that you may want to screenshot. Don't delete the text messages. Don't delete the emails. Those are things that we need in order to prove the case. The other thing that I've seen as far as telephone harassment, when you're actually leaving voicemails that can be threatening in nature, keep that information, because that is what can assist us in proving those particular crimes. So when I talk about harassment by telephone, harassment by electronic means, generally those are what we call misdemeanor crimes. But we also see cyber stalking. And when we talk about cyber stalking, pretty much we're talking about stalking, but on an electronic means level. So once again, that could be by telephone, it could be by text message, it could be by social media. Once again, keep all of those messages, and we are looking for a course of conduct, and we are looking for things that put you in an uncomfortable place, that it can cause some type of emotional abuse, and things of that nature. And that allows us to get the elements so that we can prove that particular case. And Commissioner, as we know, during this particular time, the high stress situations are definitely creating more violence, and we're seeing it definitely in different ways. As we use Zoom, other people are using technology as a means to continue that type of abuse. So definitely when we have the facts that are presented to us and we're able to prove those cases, we absolutely go forward.
Does cyber stalking, can that raise to the level of a felony?
Yes, sir. Yes, cyber stalking is a class 4 felony.
That's what I thought. All right, thank you, Assistant State's Attorney. Director Morris, you know, one thing I learned during my training through the Archdiocese is that abuse does not only come in the context of a significant other or a spouse, there's also elder abuse, and there are other aspects of abuse that may take place. Do you have a breakdown as to is there a usual age range where you see these cases, or are they kind of run the gamut as to how old the people are who are suffering from the abuse?
I do not have a specific age range. We certainly can look for that information, and I will get that back to the panel. Unfortunately, there really is no breakdown. It impacts everyone. We work with seniors through our senior program, and we speak with them about various forms of abuse. And unfortunately, from the youngest to the most senior, people are impacted by it. But our office does provide resources to both young people. We are constantly out in the community helping young people learn that domestic violence, as Assistant State's Attorney McCoy Cummings said, impacts juveniles as well. Intimate partner violence, we lead them to resources with that. There are a number of websites that parents can go to regarding how to avoid that. Some of the things that you can look at with respect to seniors and with respect to the young people are changes in behavior, changes in their demeanor, and we certainly keep an eye on that and do all that we can to support them.
Yeah, Director Morris, I noticed that we've shown a movie called The Hunting Ground a number of times in different parishes throughout the Chicago area. It's based on abuse in like high school and young adult relationships. So those also, I know, can be a big part of what you're going to have to deal with. So it does really run the gamut of ages and relationships from young to old. I do think we could do a couple more questions if the panel would be willing to stick around for just a few more minutes. Carol, you talked a little bit about how things have changed with the therapists in your office. Do you feel that there is an ability to address, from a therapeutic standpoint, the issues that would typically be faced with someone coming into your facility? I mean, are you still able to do that even though it's remote?
No, we really are. We were able to really pivot and really confident that the clients are getting the help they need. It's transitioned a little bit as COVID started out immediately with the shutdown. Everybody, our therapists almost talked, it was about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People were really concerned just about food and shelter and the illness and could not quite focus on the abuse. But as time has gone on, we've really settled into a rhythm where our clients are getting the help that they need, and they are moving forward, and they are, again, we follow their lead. So they are developing the important outcomes like coping skills and regaining them sense of selves. They are moving forward on their journey and getting the support they need. And some of them are moving forward with leaving or divorces or whatever is in their journey. So it's harder. It's taking the toll, I think, for advocates and people in the field. The stress is very hard. A lot of what our therapists are going through, a lot of what our clients go through, sometimes all of us in COVID are going through some of that, the sense of isolation, not knowing when this will end, feelings of hopelessness. It's hard when you're experiencing yourself as well. So we see that in our clients, and it's hard for all the staff.
And I remember in my training, they discussed the difficulties that there are, particularly if the abusing partner or spouse controls finances, and that you have to have a plan put together with involving your children, your own finances, in a way to get away without being obviously harmed physically. I'm sure that you can still try to provide all of that information through the indications that you have from your remote therapy. So I think that's also useful.
For sure. And the other thing we're seeing is a lot of more higher need for direct financial assistance. And we're fortunate to have some funds to really help with groceries and some rent assistance. But, the job loss is an issue for sure. And control the finances. Yes.
Well, thanks, Carol. We do have a question in the chat that I actually don't know the answer to, despite I got out of law school in 1985, so it's been a while. But Assistant State's Attorney McCoy Cummings, if you maybe could answer this for us. The question is there a statute of limitations on reporting domestic abuse?
Yes, and it depends on whether there is a misdemeanor or whether there is a felony. So based upon the particular crime, that statute of limitation can change. And so I would advise anyone that has particular questions with regards to specific facts to reach out to us, and we can help them with that. I also like to say, not only when we talk about domestic abuse, statute of limitations versus misdemeanors and felonies, but just to add that sexual assaults can also have a statute of limitations, but they differ. And it depends on when they happen, the age of the person, when there was actually notification to the police, and whether there was any type of DNA. And so for anything specific, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we can help guide that to determine. But I also like to say, even if you believe that you might be outside of the statute of limitations, it is very important to always call the police and to give that information no matter when the crime happened. And I say that because it can help us. In lots of instances, this may not be the first time of domestic abuse, and we can utilize those old reports or those old incidents in order to file particular motions. And so for several cases, we may have something that happened in 2020, but they had abuse with the same person that might have happened in 2016. it might be outside of the statute of limitations for us to file a case, but we can file certain motions called proof of other crimes in order to bring up that past abuse. And so I say in any situation, do not hesitate to make a report, no matter when the time frame was for both domestic and for sexual assault, because it could possibly be used in other ways.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's very informative. I do think we're getting close to the break of our time. I just want to thank our panel. It was a very powerful presentation. Every time I discuss this, whether it was through my private work through the Archdiocese or through my work as a Cook County Commissioner, I feel like there's so much work to be done. But when I see the allies that we have in the President, in our panelists, and all the different groups that unite together to provide individuals with the resources they need, and that there is hope and there is light at the end of the tunnel for so many people who sometimes feel like there is no hope. And I believe that we have the resources within the county to make sure that those people have a way out. And we will provide that through my office, I know through all the commissioners' offices, through the state's attorney, through the sheriff's office, and through the President's very significant work on women's issues generally, and specifically on domestic violence as we go into Domestic Violence Month. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody, because I do this every time I'm on, if you haven't filled out the census, please do. It's extremely important for us in the state of Illinois, for resources, including things that we use for domestic violence. Also, if you haven't registered to vote, please make sure you do. You still have time. And try to plan out a way that you can vote either through the mail or through early voting to make sure that you can be safe and that your vote is counted. I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this evening. Again, my office number is 312-603-4932. If there's ever anything that we can do to help, please do not hesitate to reach out. Again, to our panel and to President Preckwinkle and everyone who is here, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.